So let me give you a specific example so you can all begin to realize how this will work when the military takes complete control of your life through these monopolies. Over years of world domination, the Vatican has realized that it's not enough just to control all religions, hospitals, schools, militaries, and police, because people will still protect each other through their different businesses and trades. The Vatican's hierarchy of sadistic depravity failed if people owned their own private businesses and farms and stores, because they could still hire who they wanted and conduct businesses the proper way they wished. So that is why the Vatican and their corporate establishment had to form all these giant monopolies to take complete control of the marketplace as well. So first and foremost, through monopolies, they will obviously decide from the top who will have a job and who will remain unemployed. And the only people who will have a job in the future is the military, while the rest of you remain unemployed, lucky to collect a state welfare check. In military bases, as you might know, they have a surplus of people. A small percentage might have jobs as drill instructors, desk jobs, guard jobs, but the majority of military personnel, after being trained, basically just sit around the military base if they are not being deployed to war. Now, as the military takes over your constitutional American government, replacing it with a military dictatorship, you can expect for all these millions of military guys to be given undercover jobs in grocery stores, Home Depots, Walmarts, gas stations, car dealerships, because this is all part of the silent war against America and American rights. The U.S. military plans to invade their own country, but they want to do it stealthily, and so stealthily, in fact, that most of you will not even catch on to the fact until it's too late. So let me explain to you how this works with an important example. I reported before that there's a giant grocery store monopoly here in Waterbury, Connecticut called Stop and Shop. In Waterbury, 3 of the supermarkets are this Stop and Shop corporation. So that is pretty much all we have in the area as far as grocery stores go. So Stop and Shop began to sell rotten food, and the first couple of times I let it go. I said to myself, this may happen with ground beef sometimes. The expiration date was good until next week, but it got old a couple days early. But when I began to buy blocks of cheese, for example, with an expiration date of 4 months away, but when I opened it up, it was already rotten, releasing a terrible smell, something is very wrong there, especially when it happened several times, and not only at the Stop and Shop down the street from me, but also at the Stop and Shop across town. So I decided to go in and complain. So I went to the customer service desk and I explained that they were selling products that were supposed to be good for months still, but were already rotten as soon as you opened the package. So there was this undercover military woman working there who snatched the cheese out of my hand and then slapped $5 on the counter angrily. And while I was trying to explain the whole situation, she shouted, "Next!" to the person behind me. She made it clear that she didn't care that her store was selling rotten food. She didn't care to hear the customer out and apologize for selling rotten food that could potentially harm the customer. She didn't care to ask what specific products I had issues with to correct the situation. So I told her, look, I wasn't finished explaining this issue to you. At the very least, you could be decent enough to hear me out, you being customer service and all. So she snaps at me, "You want to talk to a manager?" So like any good military sheep, she is unable to deal with a simple complaint herself and has to summon a manager to deal with the simple issue, because she is taught never to handle any situation herself but to kick it up the chain of command. So I say, yeah, okay, I'll talk to the manager if you, at the Stop and Shop customer service desk, are now unable to hear a customer voice a simple complaint. So the manager walks over, who's a bigger and more retarded military plant, who has crossed eyes and a mouth twitch, and that when I spoke to her, her mouth was moving as though she were constantly mumbling things to herself silently. To summarize what happened, the manager refused to hear me out. She continued to interrupt me while I explained the issue, making excuses and attempting to provoke me with a bad attitude. She acted as though it was my fault for buying rotten products from them and would constantly talk over me and wouldn't let me explain the situation, that this had been happening for quite some time at Stop and Shops all over town. She then stated something unusual and said, "I'm not going to stand here and be talked to by you." I responded, "As a manager listening to a customer with a serious complaint, yes you are." She then grabbed her two-way radio and tried to call security. At that point, when I realized that they were going to call the police on me, I left the store. So welcome to the future where the military controls all businesses and supermarkets in your area. Welcome to the future where the military has a monopoly control of all grocery stores where they sell rotten food. If you attempt to take it back and put in a formal complaint, the customer service ignores you, the manager blames you, and if they feel like it, they could call the cops and have you arrested. So in the future, a public disturbance will be someone who complains to a store manager about being sold rotten food again and again. Of course, the authority of that store, which is the military, will be in line with the authority of the police, which is the military, and so you, the citizen, don't stand a chance. And that will be all over the place, whatever store or business you might enter. The corporation can rip you off, talk shit to you, sell you rotten food, and if you try to complain, they could have you arrested. And of course, you can't go anywhere else because that same monopoly corporation owns all the stores in your area. So that is how the military takes control of your country and then attacks you by having everyone arrested who is brave enough to speak up for themselves when they don't like being sold rotten food. So they'll get all those guys off the streets and put them in prisons, while the little slaves who know how to shut their mouths and eat whatever rot the military wants to shovel down their throats will be left alone as long as they do whatever they are told. So you start to have a regression of morality, decency, and human strength in the American populace, replaced by a terrified and bullied population controlled by the military to eat rotten food on command without question. So in monopolies, you can't go down the street to the store's competitors because there aren't any competitors. You can't complain about the prices or about the quality of food or about anything because they might call the police on you and have you arrested for complaining to a manager. So this will be across the board. The corporate power establishment controlling all stores through monopoly control. Without any competitors for you to be able to go to, you have lost all rights and are forced to deal with corporations that hate you, treat you like shit, and sell you broken and rotten merchandise, and you have no protection if you don't like it. You don't like it? Get out of the store, or we'll call the cops on you for making problems. So a society develops of these sadistic, dumbed-down military goons on power trips, controlling a bunch of weak little slaves, and slowly your human race begins to de-evolve. By an unnatural selection, the weakest, most stupid, and easy to control are allowed to exist, as the most intelligent and tough-minded people are killed or locked away in prisons. And this is all part of the alien agenda, as assisted by the world's oldest monopoly corporation, the Vatican, controlling your U.S. military and federal government. But most of these compartmentalized goons don't see the big picture. They just know they have some control as long as they push the rest of you around. So it's easy for the world's scum to do well in Vatican America. With this as a model for society, you are not going in the direction where there is a big economy due to competition in the marketplace, a good selection, quality, many jobs. Instead, you are going in the direction where there are no jobs, a bad economy, monopoly rule, where corporations make more money the less of you they have to pay to work, and the less quality and standards the corporation has to maintain. So society begins to degrade itself into a subhuman state where everyone suffers, so a few could be ultra rich. So society begins to become programmed to accept worse and worse conditions and more control by this military prison establishment, which quickly realizes that due to all these monopolies, they need to eliminate great deals of people, because once out of work, people become a welfare burden on the military police state, who quickly concludes they should just simply get rid of lots of you. And they do this through disease, through controlling food and causing famine and poor health conditions where they basically poison you. Like I said, this is ultimately being orchestrated by the aliens who work through their religious cult, the Vatican, whose job it is to regress both themselves and you into the next generation of Greys. Because that is what the Dracs ultimately want, a race of people who are easy to manipulate, experiment on, and control. So the Vatican and the U.S. military will make that possible for the aliens. So the leftover populations become extremely dumbed down because that is who does the best in this low standard military controlled prison state where people are afraid to demand rights or at the very least even ask to be treated humanely. So the majority of the population lives in fear and disease and in subhuman living conditions while a network of control freaks manage the gradual decline into a planetary hell.